Do you think Batman would vote for Donald Trump?
So really, which Batman? Adam West, no. The Christopher Nolan Batman, yes. What do you think?
I don't think Nolan Batman definitely is not registered to vote.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Jill Lepore is an author, New Yorker staff writer, and professor of history and law at Harvard University. She expects a lot from her students and her readers. Her 2018 book, These Truths, A History of the United States, was 955 pages. Holy shit. Her new book, We the People, A History of the U.S. Constitution, is 720 pages. Thank you so much for being considerate. But these aren't just Zoom meeting bookshelf decorations. These are gateways to understanding how our history shapes who we are and where we're going as a country. Now, have I finished reading either of these books? No. But I have followed Professor Lepore for years because she understands that the best way to explain the present is to talk about the past. So we get into it. We talk about technocracy, propaganda, AI presidents, and the 1939 Madison Square Garden Nazi rally here in New York City. And I ask her a question on behalf of America's tech oligarchs. Isn't the manifesto basically just a constitution with more cocaine?
Hurry right away, no delay, stop the day. Make your daddy glad to have had such a lad.
The moon could be holding over $1 trillion worth of platinum in its craters. This is such a wild concept that I had to check it out on Ground News, which is today's sponsor. Ground News shows a breakdown of publications reporting on a story, including the ownership, factuality, and political leanings of that story. It's not about eliminating bias. We've all got biases. It's just trying to make you aware of potential biases or the veracity of different publications as you analyze an event or an issue. For example, when I read about the moon, I was able to scroll between some of these 17 reporting publications. 84% of the sources were considered high factuality by Ground News, while others were not. Though I probably could have guessed that by the headlines. One article was titled, quote, "A sensational treasure is hidden on the moon. Whoever gets it could become very rich." I'm skeptical, but I am listening. Use the link in the description or go to groundnews.com/HASAN to get 40% off their Vantage plan. The same one we use here at HMDK. That breaks down to just $5 a month for unlimited access. Visit groundnews.com/Hasan and subscribe today. You teach history at Harvard University and you're also a law professor. You wrote a 955-page history of the United States. Many people have it on their bookshelf. I saw it as decoration. You get half credit for
owning it.
Yeah. I saw it as decoration. You know, the Zoom meeting flex. It's in the background of it has some heft to it.
That counts.
My question to you is, are Americans too dumb about history to realize that we are reliving history right now?
No. History as an academic discipline, okay, set that aside for a minute. But just like we live in a world where we're constantly orienting ourselves in relationship to the past.
Yeah.
So that for sure happens with people as they think about our political circumstances too, right? I don't think it means, oh, you have to have taken AP U.S. history.
Sure.
Or you have to have gone to college. And I think people have a real sense of change over time because that's just, it's like how we steer the boat.
But do you think on some level we feel intuitive historical deja vu of like, this has to have happened before?
I think we are flooded with historical arguments. Like Make America Great Again is like a 4-word historical argument, right? Like it just like, it presupposes a past. It makes a claim about who could change the future. Like our whole politics is oriented around like progressivism. Right, there's like an argument about progress. Conservatism is an argument about conserving the traditions and history. Like we just live that. Like maybe we're not as. I mean, like my job is to think about this stuff all day. So like I think about it all day, but I don't know that people think about it all day. But I do think we are immersed in a world of daily lived experiences and popular culture and politics, where the place of history looms exceedingly large, maybe even too large.
I speak for the casuals. I speak for people that are just feeling it in the comment section, in the streets, as I mill about here in Midtown Manhattan. And one of the things I keep hearing from a lot of people is, we are living through a 1930s moment. Mm-hmm. This feels like the 1930s all over again. As a historian, what are the parallels that you see between the 1930s and the 2020s, what we're living through right now?
Well, I think when people say that, they're talking about the rise of the Nazi Party in Germany, and they're talking about the abdication by ordinary Germans of a moral voice that could have stood in opposition to what Hitler and the party were doing over the course of the 30s. They're thinking about the appeasement on the part of, so the European powers famously like kind of appeased Hitler for a long time.
Yes.
And so they're thinking about that. They're also thinking about what was at the time called the strategy of terror. The Germans had this crazy effective PR machine where before they were going to invade or do anything, they would on the radio sort of broadcast effectively that they had already done it.
Yes.
And just terrorize the population into giving up before they even rolled in the tanks.
So this is so interesting. You've written about this. You wrote about the power of radio as a form of media in the 1930s. Do you feel like there's parallel between that type of propaganda influencing the masses in the 1930s and kind of social media and Web 2.0 in the 2010s and 2020s?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I mean, like with most parallels, it's like it's parallel, but it's also perpendicular.
Sure,
you know what I mean? Like you can kind of get lost in that.
It's not perfect. It's not
perfect, right? So the thing about radio that's just kind of almost impossible to, when you have like your earbuds in and you're listening to a podcast and you have that, like that total intimacy with the voice of the person.
Why are you calling me out, Professor?
No,
yes,
like
that's
just
me
like,
on the train. Yes.
Like you feel so intimate. Like, okay, so think about when radio was new, right? You have this device in your kitchen, or in your living room, and these voices are coming in and you don't respond, like you're just listening.
Yeah.
So there was a huge amount of research at the time, like the whole like modern experimental psychology is kind of based on the study of the radio because the power of persuasion that made available was extraordinary. Yeah. And Germany's minister of propaganda, Goebbels, like understood that, right? He required everybody to have a radio in their house. And he could basically push a button from his desk and tell the German people what to believe. And in the US, there was a really determined effort to not allow that to happen, to not allow radio to become that. And there are all these kind of fantastic, so we think about like FDR and the fireside chats, like, well, maybe that is propaganda. Like he wanted to like have Americans gather around their fireside and he would tell them, we have to close the banks.
Sure. Yeah.
But there was also this incredible outpouring of democratic radio that was designed to say, okay, no, let's actually use this tool, this kind of crazy new technology that could be so bad, it could be so dangerous. Let's figure out how to use it to fortify our ideals of democratic participation, representation, and deliberation. Like NBC had this show called, I think it's called The Town Meeting of the Air. And it begins with like this bell ringing and this town cry. I mean, hear.
What decade was this?
It was called The Town Meeting of the Air. It's so cool. You can listen to it on YouTube. So there'd be like on the radio every week and they'd get this panel of people to like deliver. They had these topics. Like they were kind of like voted down topics. So it'd be like.
So still thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah, still thumbs up. Should we have like national health care? Should the Communist Party be outlawed?
Sure.
Whatever. Like, and they'd have people with different opinions debate them on the radio. And you were supposed to listen at home and then continue the debate. Like in the US, people tried to use radio to defend the United States against the rise of fascism. Whereas, of course, in Germany, is used to advance fascism. So I guess your question is like, is it parallel or not parallel? The thing is I don't think any of the pro-democracy technologies that we associate with social media have ever worked. Maybe you can think of one that is working or has worked, but there are like a lot of dreams about that.
Tell me about the federal program in the 1930s called the Federal Forum Program.
Yeah, this was this crazy good idea.
It's kind of mind-blowing.
It's a really great idea. So this guy, I think he was maybe superintendent of schools in Detroit or Cleveland or one of these kind of big Midwestern industrial towns. And he thought, all right, democracy is really in crisis. So the 30s in the U.S. were very much like this moment, to get back to your pals, in the sense that everybody was worried about the future of democracy. Like democracies are falling all over Europe. And American democracy seemed pretty fragile. So people would have these debates and, whole issues of magazines would be like, what is the future of democracy? So this guy was like, all right, well, let's actually do some democracy. I have at my disposal all of the public schools in my entire school district that are empty every evening. like, why don't we use these buildings, like this bricks and mortar, to try to like bring people together to have these debates?
Yeah.
And so they would do like door to door, like knock on the door polling. It's also like upvote, downvote, ask people what they were interested in debating. And, you know, it could really be anything. And he would just then hold these meetings at the local schools. They would have the debate that the people in the neighborhood or the precinct had chosen. People come in, like, give us some information. The public they would just have this kind of like big forum
But
about
Professor,
like,
there's two things that you laid out that I thought were so interesting, well, number one, it was federally funded. Okay. And then number two, the topics seem so prescient. Should the power of the Supreme Court be altered? Do machines oust men? Must the West get out of the East? Do company unions help labor? Can we conquer poverty? I mean, I'm like, are these 1930s
Can't we just
debate
redo
talking
those?
points?
Like, let's just do like take
or is
two.
this like the Bernie and Zoran, democratic socialism campaign? These are all
Yeah.
things we're still talking about.
Right. We didn't solve them.
We didn't solve them.
No.
But I do think it is pretty cool that, like, this was IRL debate. This isn't about social media clout. People had to put their shoes on and say that shit to your face.
Yeah. You're all about putting shoes on.
Put your shoes on.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is about Thanksgiving dinner, but you're not forced to go. You're willingly engaging in some form of discourse. And even if it is about ego, did you find that people maybe found it as a more healthy way to resolve their differences?
I think it just like got people out of the house, stretched their muscles, like renewed their democratic habits.
I mean, the closest we have in modern day, I think, was the January 6th riots. Obviously, we had a representative government, number 45. He tweeted out a time and location. He was like, pull up, come one, come all. People clearly put their shoes on. Some put on a Viking helmet. It could have used a moderator, but discourse happened. 7 people were killed, 2 were cops.
Yeah. Political protest is a different tradition. Political violence is a different, I guess you could call it a tradition. But those are, I will put to you, inimical to public debate. Like that is to go and seek to overturn an election through violence is the opposite of the founding principle of democracy that we agree to lose.
I don't know if you saw this post on Truth Social that was written by the president. Let's take a look at this. But essentially, the president here is directing this at Pam Bondi. And DJT is basically saying, hey, Bondi, I need you to go after Comey, Adam Schiff, and Letitia James. So is it safe to say when friends and fellow citizens here in society are saying we are descending into fascism, is this fascism?
It is in this sort of Orwellian sense, fascism becomes overused when both sides use it as a term of ready opprobrium. And then it loses its power, which is part of the problem with using the word fascism. You've probably noticed lately that it is far more preferred by journalists who are covering the Trump administration, by political scientists writing about executive overreach, the decay of the separation of powers, the failure of the Supreme Court to uphold its obligation to defend the Constitution against executive overreach. That really authoritarianism is, I think, a more accurate term. Fascism is a kind of cultural wide phenomenon that we could talk about differently. But I think, the outrageous Truth Social, whatever it is, post is classic authoritarianism, right? Like it is wildly unconstitutional, and the publication of it is even weirder, right? People are like, "Did he mean to put that online? Was that just like?"
No, he meant it.
He did.
Yeah, he's got a lot of practice.
He did. So I think it's tricky because there is a kind of dilution of the meaning of words that is also associated with fascism, right? So, but it is worth stepping back a minute and saying, like, remember when, Biden was like, I'm running, we're the party defending democracy.
Yes.
And yet Biden didn't want to step aside, and yet the Democratic Party didn't want to hold an open primary or have a mini convention.
Yeah.
Like, there are institutional ways in which the Democratic Party, while touting itself as the party of democracy, was being profoundly anti-democratic, which really weakens our ability to think about democracy in meaningful terms.
Right.
So if you're willing for short-term political gain to use a term to advance your own party's aims without consequence for what it does for our ability to speak with clarity to one another, then damn you. That's how I feel about that.
We're here in Midtown Manhattan. Literally a few blocks over is Madison Square Garden, aka the Mecca. I think one of the greatest arenas on planet Earth. Now, it's had many events held there. This was not a good event. In 1939, there was literally a Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden. What were the underpinnings of what happened there that allowed Ticketmaster of the time to issue tickets, have people come, all 17,500 seats get filled up? And what happened at that rally?
There is a really, truly beautiful and profoundly distressing documentary film about that rally that I would really recommend to everyone by the director Marshall Curry.
Yes.
Where he restored the footage that was taken, and there's just incredible audio of those addresses.
If you ask what we are actively fighting for under our charter, first, a social just white Gentile ruled United States. Second, Gentile-controlled labor union free from Jewish Moscow-directed domination.
It is just really chilling to look at that space where you're used to seeing, I don't know, LeBron James or Larry Bird or whoever it is,
Sure.
like these guys, and they have this giant banner of George Washington behind them, and they are selling Nazism as Americanism. That's in a way the thing to me as a historian that is really most shocking about it, the kind of repackaging of the ideals of the Nazi Party as consistent with a particular
But how did
variety
they
of
fundamentally sell this German authoritarian fascist ideology to what was considered to be one of the world's leading democracies?
Yeah, so it's important to remember they totally failed. They sucked and they failed. And they were
hot
defeated.
take, they sucked.
Yeah, they sucked.
I agree.
Yeah, right.
I agree, Professor, I agree. They
Also,
suck.
like it's also a tribute to the United States that they were able to hold an assembly. Like that is what our First Amendment is about. No one said you can't have this meeting, and the fact that they had the meeting really inspired people to think differently about just how perilous the possibility was of the United States falling to fascism. It was revelatory, I think, to Americans at the time to see that this event had happened. There are journalists who report. Dorothy Thompson, the great journalist, reports on that event.
Right.
There's a protester who is, you can see this in the documentary, who is just jumped on and dragged out of the meeting. So it is what they're arguing is the same crap that is being marketed by the far right across the history of the United States, right? In times of economic weakness where ordinary people are suffering and looking maybe for an explanation, looking for a group of people to blame, it can be sold to them as a political product that there's a particular group of people to blame. And their difference from you is one that is immutable, and their presence in the United States is itself a defilement of the founding ideals of the country. I mean, it's not hard to make the list, right? It's sort of simple. Like you could take that list of those topics at the debates held in the federal debate forums of the 1930s, and you can also take the list of the talking points of the Bund, the German Bund, which held that rally in 1939. And they will come across as very familiar.
Well, this is something that was quite chilling. I mean, I don't know if you saw this the other day, but it was reported that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, he called upon not just the top U.S. generals, but the top U.S. generals from around the world. Now, keep in mind, obviously, for those of our listeners that don't know, there's over like 750 bases, military bases that the United States has all over the world. And Pete Hegseth called them for an in-person meeting. Now, I know we're having a return to work moment, and I get it. But that's a lot of top generals that have to pull up and have a meeting in person. And that seemed unprecedented. But then a retired lieutenant general tweeted this. I don't know if you saw this. Ben Hodges goes, July 1935, German generals were called to a surprise assembly in Berlin, informed that their previous oath to the Weimar Constitution was void and that they would be required to swear a personal oath to the Führer. Most generals took the oath to keep their positions. And then Pete Hegseth quote tweets him and says, "Cool story, General." Was this
For
a cool
real? Did he really do that?
This is for real. Now, was this a cool story?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
No, I'm a little stricken by the idea that he retweeted that.
Yes, quote tweeted.
Effectively, what the Trump administration has done this second time around is, instead of attempting to abide by the Constitution, even notionally, has been very explicit that the Constitution is what Trump says it is. That he does not have a duty to uphold the Constitution. He has said as much himself, although that is in fact the oath that the president swears on his inauguration. But for Trump, the Constitution is malleable, can be whatever meaning he wants to attribute to it. So the 14th Amendment guarantees birthright citizenship. Trump says no, it doesn't. And therefore, what he says is true. Trump's general rule is, right, whatever I say is true.
So he treats himself almost as a quasi both president and Supreme Court justice, interpreter of the Constitution, essentially?
Yeah. So he has, just to be clear, there is no constitutional role for the president of the United States in interpreting the Constitution. The interpretation of the Constitution is left to the judiciary.
Right. But certainly presidents have always had...
Presidents have views about the Constitution.
They've had an ESPN first take on their favorite...
Absolutely.
But amendments, et cetera.
Right. I mean, there's not... You think about FDR gives this really important speech in 1937 about the Constitution. Truman gives a big speech about the Constitution in 1952. Presidents have views about the Constitution.
Yes.
But the Weimar moment is about saying we have to have a whole new Constitution and you have to swear to it. And the Constitution is the Führer's Constitution. Right. I think the kind of empirical question is Hegseth doesn't need to have the generals swear to Trump's Constitution.
Right.
But presumably, effectively, that is what they're being asked to do.
They don't have to literally
They don't have to
swear,
literally do that.
But kiss the ring.
Right.
Your new book, We the People, History of the Constitution, goes into not only the Constitution itself, but constitutional amendments. I
wrote the book because I just feel like it's very hard to know what the Constitution even is anymore and who's in charge of it, really. And is anyone upholding it? Or how does it change? Can it change? Who
is in charge of it?
Who is in charge of it? We are. That's the whole game. That's the whole entire point of a written Constitution.
I thought it was the Supreme Court justices that
we are.
Interpret it and then...
We are.
What do you mean by that?
We are. So cast your mind back.
Sure.
To 6th grade civics.
Yeah.
There's going to be an American Revolution. The Americans are mad. Parliament is taxing them. And they're like, look, it's unconstitutional to tax us. No representation, taxation without representation. And Parliament's like, where does it say that? England doesn't have a written constitution, as you may know. They still do not have a written constitution. It's the accretion of rulings and precedents, right? Ever changing. So the colonists, we're going to rebel, and they do. Yeah. Then immediately they need to have a government.
Sure.
The states, even before declaring independence.
Yeah. And the states had their own mini constitutions.
Because the states are like, okay, our royal governor is like a coward, and he got on a boat and went back to England. Because we, ransacked his house, called him a loyalist.
Yeah.
We have no legislature. Half those people are loyalists, and they're gone.
Yeah.
So we have no government. Yeah. So we're going to have a government, and we're going to have a constitution, England has a constitution. But you know what we're going to do? We're going to write ours down. And that was kind of a new idea. It was genuinely a new idea.
And then the other cool new idea was the Constitutional Convention.
Yeah. So then
that's pretty fire.
They're like, you know what? You know who can't write the freaking Constitution? The legislature. We're going to write the Constitution. We're going to elect special group of people.
39 delegates.
They're not going to go on and hold office.
Yes.
They're going to be people who just write the Constitution. And then, you know what? They don't just get to decide it. They send it back to the people for ratification. And you know what? On top of that, we have to have a provision in there that says we can amend it if we need to. Because if we're going to write it down, that's great. That means we can point to and say the government has this power, but not this power. We have this right. It's great to have it written down. But then it could get frozen in time. We want to have the ability to change it. And who should have the ability to change it? We do. So these were the founding principles of American constitutionalism. Yeah. That a convention has to be called to write it, that it has to go to the people for ratification, and then it has to be amendable. And all those things are true of the federal constitution, which doesn't come till 1787.
Professor, Can you imagine having a constitutional convention now? How could you even possibly get consensus on who the 39 delegates would be? Who would your 39 delegates be?
So it's not for us to decide. It's for voters to decide, right? That's like, you don't just appoint people to a convention. If you did, my list might be different. But that's not what we do. And here's the problem. We used to have state constitutional conventions all the time too. Like we've had like a couple hundred of them, but we haven't had a state constitutional convention to amend a state constitution since 1986 because Americans just don't really trust one another to get together and deliberate over fundamental questions anymore, right? There are a lot of fundamental questions we might want to ask, not like maybe the most like things about environmental protection, like what are we going to do to mitigate climate change? Do we need to fundamentally alter our state's constitution to better deal with that? What about AI? Like, are there fundamental things we want to have like privacy rights, or we want to have like, there's a lot of fundamental questions that one would think we could ask right now about this supposed new era that we're entering. But we don't deliberate that way anymore. When people like can't get through the Thanksgiving dinner argument still, like we need to build a lot of skills back, I think. Here's an analogy that I think sort of explains this. Like most people deeply believe, of all the like declining faith in institutions, one thing that most people really deeply believe in is jury trial and jury service. The idea that at the end of the day, like 12 randomly chosen people presented with evidence for or and against a conviction or, in a lawsuit can make the right decision. Like a verdict, the word means truth. Like that 12 randomly chosen people can do the right thing. And they'll deliberate. It could be really difficult, but we trust in that system. We all participate in it. And a constitutional convention is a bit like that, right? Like that you could just be called. A lot of the idea for event conventions is about choosing people by lottery. Like should be just kind of random, like who participates. We don't need Beyonce to tell us what to do in the Constitution.
That'd be kind of cool though.
Well, would it? She has a good hat.
Right.
That would be good. But so so we don't do it anymore. We haven't done it in like many years, and we've never done it federally since 1787. Like if you imagine that we had stopped having jury duty in the 60s because someone said like, oh, mainframe computers could do it better, and like we'll just let a computer decide guilt or innocence, and that's how we've been doing it for 50 years. Like, could we reintroduce jury trial today? Like, would people, if they hadn't done it in 2 generations, trust one another?
Right.
That's that's sort of where we are with the idea of a constitutional
unlikely.
convention. Yeah.
For me, it feels like the Constitution is basically cooked. All these things that I thought were democratic norms that were enshrined in law, the right to abortion, gone. Discrimination against LGBTQ people, gone. Birthright citizenship. We'll see. First Amendment, barely hanging on. Separation of church and state, it's not really a thing anymore. So is the Constitution cooked?
I was at an event in Seattle the other night, and someone asked that question in the Q&A. And I said,
is the Constitution basically cooked?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So it was great. It was like 500 people in this beautiful, beautiful former church. And so I said, all right, like all in favor of all, say aye if you believe that there's still use in the Constitution and we should figure out how to uphold it and amend it. And then I did all opposed nay. And there were like 10 people that said nay. It was kind of a resounding aye. And I was kind of impressed by that. Like, I think, it's like the framers said, and I'm not a big defer to the framers person, but like one of the more brilliant things they said is like the Constitution lives in the hearts and the minds of the American people. Like, if we have the Constitution we want. If it's being trampled on, it's up to us to stop that.
Right.
So, yeah, it's all the things that you say about the ways in which it's cooked. Are ways in which it's cooked. But like, is that inevitable? Is that not reversible? I look.
You can be optimistic.
You gotta put your skin in the game, and it does kind of require you getting out into the streets.
I mean, right now, basically, the Supreme Court, they're the interpreters of the Constitution, and as you were saying, there's some hardcore originalists, take like a Clarence Thomas. I would call him like a constitutional Wahhabist. But is it almost like the way religions interpret the Bible? Hey, you have your original text. We have the Old Testament. But then, hey, there are these new ways to interpret it. Mormonism, Lutheranism,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah. And that is, the means of, first of all, the power that the Supreme Court has granted to itself as the supreme interpreter of the Constitution is a fairly recent vintage and has a whole historical thing. But the method that the Supreme Court uses to interpret the Constitution changes a lot over time. It tends to wax and wane, honestly, with evangelicalism.
I want to jump ahead a little bit here. One of the things that you recently wrote in the New York Times was specifically about artificial intelligence, and you wrote about Sam Altman. And you're pretty cynical and critical of the claims that he has made about how he wants to bring AI into the world democratically.
Don't you think he's pretty cynical about the claims that he has made?
Well,
I think there are fewer, more deeply cynical people than Sam Altman.
I am trying to understand what makes him tick. And I wanted to ask you, why the cynicism? I mean, tech oligarchs, they love a manifesto. They love a form of a constitution. These are the rules. They love the terms of agreement. Isn't a manifesto basically a constitution, but with more cocaine?
Yeah, a manifesto is the opposite of constitutionalism. It's one man's determination of how we all should live. Do you remember maybe you're so much younger.
I'm 4 years old.
In the 90s and the early 2000s, there was so much adulation of the Silicon Valley entrepreneur as the new hero of America and the world. And it was kind of maddening because everything that these entrepreneurs, not everything, but much that a certain segment of entrepreneurs promised just was never realized. In fact, had the opposite effect. Like if you think about the founding mission of Facebook, it's going to connect us all.
Yes.
It's going to bring equal rights around the world. It's going to be an engine of humanity.
And a photo album for great weekend parties.
Also that. And okay, maybe that came true.
And the wall for birthday posts.
Okay.
It also regularly reminds
and you get
me
to be
whose birthday
email.
it is.
You get to hear by email from people that you went to high school with and
Correct.
didn't ever want to hear from again.
Correct.
So those things came true. But in fact, it was an engine of polarization,
Yes.
extremism, radicalism, political dysfunction,
No bueno.
destroyed local journalism,
Really bad.
had huge negative consequences. And yet there have been no consequences whatsoever and and essentially no government action whatsoever.
Right.
And the latest project of, Zuckerberg under now the rubric of Meta is personal superintelligence for everyone. Zuckerberg announced last summer that's his new goal. He's going to usher in a new era of human history with personal superintelligence for everyone. It's going to lead to prosperity, equality, greater connection, but better humanity. Like why people don't get called on this, given that everything about the idea that the CEO of an international corporation gets to determine the rules by which people in a democratic society lives is in opposition to the principles in which we actually do live.
Yeah.
I just think the press has been very complicit in the adulation and lack of investigation and critical distance. There's much more of that now. And now it's like, oh, now you're a doomer. Like, okay, would have been good to be a doomer in about 2002.
I mean, do you foresee the speed at which they are working and the fact that the current justice system and the current government is so analog, the speed of digital and
yeah. Well,
that these technologists,
yeah.
they're essentially the new founding fathers. Could you argue that? They're shaping
there's always a
the
problem.
new America.
Like technology changes at a much faster pace than does the law, and
Yes.
certainly than do constitutions.
Yeah.
So we're really struggling with that. There's just like it's a kind of like tortoise and a hare situation.
You've done such deep analysis about many technologists, and I'd love this because I grew up as a NorCal kid. Grew up, born and raised.
Did you want to be
in
Musk when you were a
Sacramento.
kid?
Did I want to be Elon Musk when
Yeah.
I was a kid? What's so funny is I had friends that worked at SpaceX.
Yeah.
Like worked at Tesla,
Yeah.
2002, 2003, 2004
Yeah.
Tesla. And
Yeah.
really, when I have this conversation, my friends that grew up in the Bay, so many of my family friends work in technology. But I feel like when I read about technology and the way it's covered, there's kind of two camps. These techno-futurists are either curious nerds or they are evil supervillains. Have you seen The Incredibles?
Of course, I've seen The Incredibles.
So they're basically written like they're Syndrome from The Incredibles.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen The Incredibles, Syndrome is basically the evil villain at the end. He has like a froyo hair like that at the top, and he's really fucked up and bad. But it's one or the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that the way you see it, or is it a little bit of both?
I mean, I think I once wrote a piece for the New Yorker called "How Elon Musk Went from a Superhero to a Supervillain."
Yes.
Because it's like it's very much that you're exactly right. Like we have these two ways of thinking about these characters, and that's largely because just like narratively, it's satisfying to think about them in either of those categories.
Yeah, right. Where are we in the hero's journey?
And like I
or
totally
whatever?
get that.
Yeah.
Like I have not missed a Marvel movie and never will. Like I'm fine with that. But like at the level of politics, that's crazy. Like that, the fact that you have this glamour, celebrity, whatever, you're on the Time 100 most influential people, doesn't mean you actually get to tell the rest of us how to live. Like this is the thing, like I started that New York Times piece with a quote by Altman. This old, it's maybe 2016. And he says like, if I wasn't in on this, I wouldn't want these fuckers telling me what to do. And it's like, yeah, well, that's how we all feel. I feel like that's how, maybe you don't feel that way. Maybe you're happy to have them tell you what to do, but like we didn't decide as a society that they get to tell us how to live.
I'm not cool with that.
Okay.
And guess what? I was a former Time 100 person, and I don't get to tell anybody what to do. I have zero power.
I don't mean to indict the Time 100. I'm just saying, like, we have a
YouTube podcast
whole fetish
in
about,
Midtown
like,
Manhattan.
whatever. You have the gold platinum, you enter the plane first, you have your personal jet. Like, these things, I don't fucking care. Like, I'm sorry, but like, if you either believe in democracy or you don't.
I'm not even. I don't take any of these as personal attacks, and I'm only United 1K. I wish I was Global Services, but I'm only 1K. In your column, you mentioned a moment from Sam Altman's appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast, and I want to play that moment back for you.
We were joking around the other day on the podcast where I was saying that what we need is an AI government. We should have an AI president and have AI
just
run
make all the
things.
decisions.
Yeah, have something that's completely unbiased, absolutely rational.
I'll tell you something I love about that. Someday, let's say that thing gets built. The fact that it can go around and talk to every person on Earth, understand their exact preferences at a very deep level, you know, how they think about this issue and that one and how they balance the trade-offs and what they want, and then understand all of that and like collectively optimize for the collective preferences of humanity or of citizens of the US. That's awesome.
Is that awesome?
It's not awesome. You know, there were some great short stories. A lot of fiction writers imagined this in the 1950s. Isaac Asimov wrote a story called The Franchise. There's another story where the president is AI, and they're all dystopian, right? It's like the very opposite of what we believe, right? That we do actually prefer humans to machines, at least thus far in human history. Insofar as, you know, basic matters of judgment, a capacity for sympathy. I think I would say that I don't speak for the majority of humankind, but I think most of us still believe that living in a body is part of being intelligent, that you can't actually be an intelligent machine that is a super intelligence over humans. Like we have an embodied capacity for knowledge. Like there's like, that's actually tyranny. Like that, like, did you people not watch any science fiction from the 90s? Like it is a through line of science fiction. It goes back to the middle of the 19th century, even that we would one day be ruled by machines because we keep ceding bigger and bigger parts of our lives to decision making by machines. And, you know, we are not that far from that. It's like intellectual play for Joe Rogan, I guess, but we're not like, I think you can reasonably ask, like, how far are we from being governed by artificial intelligence? Given that, for instance, our public discourse is almost exclusively
in the digital sphere.
In the digital sphere.
Yeah.
So multinational corporations determine who sees this show, and you know how often you're going to be, what you're going to be, what else you're going to be shown.
Robotic algorithms and large language models.
Right. It's like,
are
and again,
determining
like,
what you see or don't see.
Was that was there a vote taken? Should we cede public discourse in the public square to corporations who believe that machine speech is free? It falls under First Amendment protections. I didn't choose that. Like, I think that it is a real question how much we still are governing ourselves, given. I have this book coming out next year called The Rise and Fall of the Artificial State, which I make the argument that we essentially live in an artificial state. Like the liberal nation state is so imperiled by the corporate ownership of public discourse, where the majority of participants in our public square are bots, right? Like it's they're all inverted platforms now where there are more bots than humans participating in them.
Wait, so you believe in dead internet theory?
I I don't believe in dead internet theory.
Come on. I thought we were going to get it popping on the pod.
No, that would be a hot take.
Okay, well, what's interesting is that basically you're saying the only current civilians that we have that have the most amount of brain share that aren't being infringed upon by these tech oligarchs are essentially my friends that have flip phones.
Your friends that have flip phones, yeah.
So that's just Aziz Ansari. That's my one buddy who still uses a flip phone.
It's just Aziz.
Just Aziz.
Well, good for him.
One tech oligarch you've deeply researched is Elon Musk. And you released a whole podcast on him. And it was called X-Man. In the first episode, you talk about how he went from comparing himself to Iron Man to comparing himself to Batman. But you explore the question of whether Batman is kind of fascism coded. Do you think Batman would vote for Donald Trump?
So really, which Batman? Adam West, no. The Christopher Nolan Batman, yes. What do you think?
I don't think Nolan Batman definitely is not registered to vote.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
The Killing Joke Batman, where he's kind of like older and grizzled, when he's got the gray specks of hair in him. Killing Joke. That's World War II dad Batman. He's a little MAGA Batman. I think he might.
Yeah, fair enough.
Elon Musk started with a great story. His business model was saving the world. It was capitalism for good. Did that story change, or was it just never true?
There was a whole thing in the 90s it started the late 80s, like the kind of message boards of Silicon Valley, where like all this rhetoric of existential risk, like the world is facing these existential risks, that was imported from like national security studies, and like only our like tech innovation can save the world from these existential risks. And a lot of that discussion was about climate change. And I think that's a big part of what fired up Musk. When you like early on, you see these early interviews with very young Elon Musk, like late 90s. He's really committed to sustainability, and like he has this kind of spirit of adventure around what becomes SpaceX, but Tesla, not just as a car company, but as a battery manufacturer, right? He's like really committed to sustainability. But he also has what is just the water that everybody is sipping out there, a kind of recycled technocracy movement ideology, which is like there was a political party in the 1930s called Technocracy, and Musk's grandfather was a leader of it. And they did not believe in democracy. They also didn't believe in communism or fascism, but they believed that democracy should be replaced by engineers making all the decisions. Scientists and engineers would make all the decisions. There should be no money. They believed in something basically pretty close to a universal basic income. That in the age of the modern industrial economy, democracy no longer made sense. It was, as they would say, it was just stupid. So I think that is a big part of Musk's worldview and the worldview a lot of the current crop of tech CEOs. Really, it's just a kind of recycled version of technocracy.
What is the most interesting thing that you learned about Elon Musk in your deep research of him?
I really loved learning about his father. So his father, Joshua Haldeman, he was Canadian, and he was the national leader of the technocracy movement in Canada. And then when the movement was outlawed, You
mean his father, Errol Musk?
I mean, his grandfather, Joshua Haldeman. Yeah, his maternal grandfather. When the movement was outlawed, he was arrested. He was denied entry into the United States. And then he became a leader of this anti-Semitic party called the Social Credit Party. When that kind of went down in flames and he failed to be elected, he left Canada for South Africa right after apartheid was announced. And then he became a very prominent defender of the apartheid regime. And publishes a lot of conspiratorial tracts that he self-publishes. Like he types them out, and he has a newsletter called Survival. And he writes all these tracts called like The World Conspiracy of the International Health Organization. He's like anti-vaccine. I was really fascinated by discovering, partly because these very unpalatable tracts of Haldeman's have been mostly, I think, destroyed. The family is certainly not going to make them available. But there was like a radicalism collection at, I think, Michigan State University, where they had been collecting radicalism, like writings of the KKK and stuff, and they had some of Haldeman's writings. So it was really amazing to be able to track those down. I also met a bibliographer of Anti-Semitica who had a bunch of Haldeman's writings and shared them with me. it's like, as a historian, like an archival discovery is always like the most intriguing thing. Like
you're a microfiche stan.
Yeah, like for a reporter, it's like, someone to go on record with, the like deep throat or whatever. But for a historian, it's like finding something that no one else has ever seen before. That was really exciting. And also because they were so, you were asking just to circle back about the echoes of the 1930s, the technocracy stuff really is kind of prophetic. It's still with us.
Do you think his maternal grandfather's writings and the conspiracy stuff and all that, even the abhorrent anti-Semitic stuff, do you think that had any impact on him?
I don't have any idea about that. Like, Musk was like 2 years old when his father died in a plane crash. His father was an aviator, like they have a lot in common. They actually look extremely alike. I don't know. Maybe the family writings were in the household. It's certainly not something that Musk himself has ever spoken about. That's like beyond my ability. Like, a historian shouldn't speculate about that. I don't know. And he's not responsible for his grandfather's views. It's more just like that kind of stuff is on X all the time now. And his grandfather's stuff completely vanished, because it used to be when you had lunatic conspiratorial ravings that you typed up and sent in newsletters to your friends, they put them in the trash, and that was the end of that. But now, like, Musk has, there's a social media thing that's like going to amplify those views.
We've read about all these Silicon Valley guys thinking about the future. They're techno-futurists, but they're also simultaneously building doomsday bunkers. So I've been struggling to understand this, right? Elon thinks we need to colonize Mars. Why are so many people that are trying to, quote, build the future also terrified of the future?
I think they really do live in a world of a science fiction imaginary. So it's really, for them.
And do you see that optimistically?
The Terminator storyline is kind of an inevitability in their mind. And so they can't.
T2 or T1?
No, T1. So what's that set in 2029? I think maybe in LA. Remember, like, the opening scene, it's like LA is in ruins.
Yeah.
And then then we go back in time to whatever, Linda Hamilton or what. Like, they can't travel back in time to fix it, and they know they're actually bringing it on, so they kind of want to travel forward in time to make sure they have an escape route. Like, I just think they live in that. They live in that imaginary. I thought that actually really came across in that Mountainhead film. Did you watch Mountainhead?
Oh yeah, I love Mountainhead.
Yeah, I thought it was really.
He's great in it.
I thought it was a really clever embodiment of those ideas.
Yes.
Well, they'll be a Mountainhead. They can go have their Ayn Rand, utopia where the rest of the world is burning. They're like watching on their phones as like people are dying in the streets, and they're like, well, shall we, sacrifice another bowl of caviar to our temporary fetish for caviar?
So you're basically saying there will always be this sort of ivory tower safe space, whether it's up in a mountain or down in a doomsday bunker, where they can separate. I mean,
it's an illusion. They don't get to survive any more than anybody else does. But that they're in. I mean, like, your question is, why are they so invested in that illusion? It's honestly like it's the James Bond evil Dr. No lair. Like, really, it's fiction. But that scene in Mountainhead when they bring the baby up to visit the guy who's supposed to be sort of Zuckerbergian?
Yeah.
And he like dotes on the baby's like been traveling for 20 hours, no doubt, in great misery.
Yeah.
And he like snuggles with him for like the 30 seconds that he needs of his own humanity, and then sends him off again.
Yeah.
That, I think, was the best representation in that film of the alienation from humanity and the human condition, that the fantasy of a world where we're governed by machines, where machines do all of our work for us, where our friends are machines. There's just a kind of abdication of the basic, like, living in a human
being a
body.
person.
Yeah,
just be a person.
Be a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Professor Jill Lepore, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a real treat to talk to you.
This was awesome.
Hurry right away.